switch to English. So as Margarita said, my name is Viktorija Trimbel. Has a committed capital at the moment of 30 million, and among other sectors that we invest, we are the first and remain the largest in success. And the panel that I will be hosting today, I would like now to call panel participants. The panel will be called 3I. Innovate, invest, and integrate, and how we can use the possible tools and what is happening in the world, and how we can build a business and win at cognitive warfare using the opportunities that are at our fingertips. So now I would like to call on stage Dr. Shahriar, who is the founder of the first private equity fund in the Baltics, the Baltic Fund, and is a board member for the Wellness Free Economic Zone. We already have Jeremy Hitchcock. So Shahriar, please take a seat on the panel. You see online Jeremy Hitchcock, who is a partner at New North Ventures, which invests in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity and the next generation communication sectors. Jeremy is also co-founder and CEO of Wi-Fi management and IoT security startup Minim, which is listed on NASDAQ and has successfully exited from internet performance management company Dean, which he bootstrapped and sold to Oracle for $600 million in 2017. And we had the pleasure to host Jeremy in Lithuania in person recently. Then I would like to call on stage Ms. Erika Kuročkina, Vice Minister of the Ministry of Economy and Innovation, who is in charge of defense industry and innovations, digital policy and innovations in the public sector, and also public procurement policy. And she's a true ambassador of dual use and defense ecosystem. She's also a member of Vilnius City Council. Last but not the least, I would like to invite my colleague, Sandra Golbreich. She is a founding partner at Baltic Sandbox Accelerator and general partner at Baltic Sandbox Ventures. In fact, represents our joint portfolio company because we co-invested together. And this VC fund is also investing in dual use and defense solutions, supports early stage deep tech and life science startups in Northern Europe. Sandra also co-founded Business Angel School, won Angel of the Year nominations in different countries, and also hosts our initiative Women with Wings that unites women in VC and also in defense fields. So thank you, everyone. I would like probably to still start a little bit, very briefly, please, with the definitions what we'll be speaking about today, because the audience is also watching us online through direct broadcast in both Lithuanian and English languages. So what is it and how is different and why these concepts and topics are important? You know, if we speak of cognitive versus connective warfare, half-truths, disinformation, info operations or psychological operations. So Shahriar, we'll start with you. How would you define and why these concepts are important and how they differ from each other, if you can really make such distinction?
Does this work? Yeah, I guess it works. Thank you very much, Viktorija. Thank you very much including me in this distinguished company. We are at a Cold War. If I had any doubt about it, last month here in Vilnius at the 3Cs conference, when everything was about dual use. You want to build a road, make it dual use. I went to Saudi Arabia from here. There was a World Economic Forum, and that was the primary concern. Would the world economy withstand geopolitical risks that we face? 2 wars ongoing, another one possible, China, Taiwan. Now, what's important? What's the relation between the importance of cognitive warfare, info wars, which are quite different, and we won't get into it, and the physical, the kinetic side. If you ask somebody like me, comes from artificial intelligence background, of course I would say it's narratives, it's the info wars. So let me quote a general. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. He said the ratio of morale to the physical in war is 3-to-1. Okay, I guess it's extremely important who wins this war of narratives. But let's do a SWOT analysis between Western liberal democracies and authoritarian, totalitarian states. Who's winning? It's not clear, because there are examples of gross failure by the authoritarian, totalitarian systems. I'll just give you one example. The Digital Forensic Research Lab of the Atlantic Institute did a study of Russian disinformation the 70 days prior to February 24th, 2022, incursion into Ukraine. 2,201 on the theme that Russia seeks peace. All the things that Russia is doing to maintain peace. 2,086, and Russia has a moral obligation to preserve stability in the region. 1,888, Ukraine is aggressive, of course, after an event about Bandera in Kiev. It was easy to do that sort of thing. But they use it. Or the West creates tensions, 1,729. And this was all over the 14 major mouthpieces of Kremlin. From Izvestia, RIA Novosti, Rossiyskaya Gazeta, TASS, Interfax, Kommersant, you name it. Did they succeed? Absolutely not. Because when you see the 7-year-old man shot from the back in Bucha, who's going to believe that Russia wanted peace or wanted stability in the region? What failed? The master narrative is what failed. What was the master narrative that combined all of these things? 6 months before the incursion into Ukraine, Putin's famous article on the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians, our kinship transmitted through generations. Together we have always been and will be much stronger, for we are one people. You believe that when you see a column of 40 kilometers of tanks coming towards Kiev? But do they always fail? No. The Speaker of the House in the US on the appropriation of $40 billion for Ukraine, it was touch and go. They didn't succeed in saying they're for peace, the Russians, but they did succeed amazingly well in polarizing opinion in the United States and the West. So that it was touch and go on before a very long briefing by intelligence, the dire consequences of not doing that. Finally, Speaker Johnson came around. There are many cases of miserable failure of the West in the battle of narratives. And I'll only just mention the most disastrous one that killed the US will to be involved in world affairs more than any other event. And that was the incursion into Iraq, where they won the military part of the conflict absolutely hands down in 3 weeks. But years later, it was the worst enemy of the United States, Iran, that got their favorite prime minister elected in Iraq and completely controlled it because they won the battle of narratives in Iraq. I'll stop right there.
Thank you, Shahriar. When you quoted this proportion, 3-to-1, if you win the mines, then you need only, 1 to 3, kind of say, much a smaller proportion of the kinetic, weapons. And we all know, and the previous speaker said that this year is extraordinary in the global history in terms of how many democratic states are undergoing elections. And Jeremy, now I'm looking at you, both with the screens or the camera, so you could also see my face. I assume you are now in US, although you've been traveling lately around the world. So what is your latest impression? And also, it's not only what's happening right now in the US, but you being a very successful cyber entrepreneur and one of the investors in the field. So what do you see what is happening right now in the US? And I just remember, we recently were in Boston together on your invitation in the National Security Conference of United States. And I managed to politely call out the chairman of the US Congress Armed Forces Committee after his introductory speech and, statements that the US has to rethink or regain its role in the world. And I said, okay, it's easy for me to ask because I'm not local. So what really Ukraine needs? Peace or victory? And what shall we do with Putin, stop or defeat? And as he was speaking also about return on defense investments, why the support to Ukraine was stalling, if you wish. And you remember, reaction. So what has changed since? Because, things are now changing basically on the daily basis. We have news coming. So what is the latest views and the trends in US in terms of the field, and also then from your perspective as an investor? Because if we have a challenge, investors also find solutions together with entrepreneurs. So Jeremy, what is your view?
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and glad I can join you remotely from the United States. So many topics to cover, and I think the issues that you bring up and the doctor started to comment on in terms of narrative is such an important thing, and humans by definition are storytellers, and the way in which narrative brings people together is one that is time tested, whether it's Homer and Odyssey or today trying to understand the narrative of autocracies versus democracies. And I think the place to start is that technology plays such a huge role in how we share information, how we tell stories, whether it's video, and we think of this in the United States from the conversations that have been taking place about TikTok. We finally figured out that the people behind TikTok are probably not the best for the United States population, and so that's undergoing a change. But the business model of how media companies work is, I think, one of the fundamental both challenges and opportunities for companies to think of how to help amplify truth. And I really love that ratio of 3 to 1 in the sense of how people are thinking about mis and disinformation to control narrative and to change the way that people are thinking. We've seen a huge rise in extremism on all fronts. And if you're a political scientist, you know this very well in this concept called the Overton window, where if you can extend the narrative to a further extreme, people by definition will try to find some middle ground. And so by moving the extreme and the goalpost further left, further right, further in directions that somebody who wants to change narrative is about, then they can shift where that agreement point can be. And I think that that's a really healthy dynamic and a really healthy understanding and beginning of understanding what the problem space is we have to understand there's truths on the ground, so that way we can have a real conversation about topics at hand.
Jeremy, do you see, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, do you see a lot of solutions somewhat similar to Ripson's or in other fields using artificial intelligence to fight this cognitive warfare is now being created in US and maybe being already financed or at least analyzed by your fund and the other fellow VCs?
I think we need more companies to do it. I can point to a couple. They're different sides of the equation. The first is understanding where narratives come from. So there's a set of not-for-profits and for-profits that are looking at where does a narrative start. And if you see that there's common trends in a certain group of quasi-anonymous, quasi-bots that are producing information and they're propagating around, there's something wrong there. Also looking at imagery and information that is doctored, changed, modified, deep fakes as a common mechanism. And so there's a whole set of tools that are both producing identification mechanisms. One of our own portfolio companies called Reality Defender is in that work. It was spun out of a not-for-profit, looking at truth in media. And so now they're thinking, how can they scale that so that it can have a larger impact? But you also have a generation of companies that are looking at how to make tools, and not all the tools are bad. We think about variety of interpretation, translation services, being able to have computers augment humans and interacting with companies. So it's not all for bad or all misinformation, disinformation, but this generative AI is one where the connection to identity and authentication is a real emerging area, and I think is going to be a great investing area for the next decade.
Thank you, Jeremy. Now let's come back from over Atlantic Ocean back to Lithuania. Erika, so you as Vice Minister for Innovations and Economy, you kind of have in your portfolio both topics of today, you know, digital policy, artificial intelligence development, and also defense and dual use. So what are the latest plans and actions of Lithuanian government in that field? We've heard during the opening speech of the new Minister of Defense about ambition to put Lithuania at the forefront in certain defense solutions. And as Europe is really, as I say, is waking up today, so the space is rather empty, and we have a chance to be a notable player. So what are the latest news from the government? What are you doing and planning for this ecosystem and business opportunities to help our societies and our military?
Thank you for the question. Well, probably first of all, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. At the moment, we are really, as actually the minister at the beginning mentioned, we are building the full encompassing ecosystem at the moment. Are we talking about the kinetic warfare power strengthening? Are we talking about defense innovation ecosystem? And of course, digital resilience. And it's really important because the war in Ukraine made it obvious that nowadays probably we're talking about the digital war, not necessarily only on-ground war missions. And sometimes even war in Ukraine is called like the digital war and the first drones war, as you know probably. So what we are doing? We are working on a couple of the major directions. One direction is definitely creation of the favorable business environment. Business environment for the foreign investors, favorable business environment for our local companies, and for those companies which are working not only in the defense, but also in other industry branches, because nowadays all economy sectors have the great potential to become a part of defense industry's value chain. So we are trying to create an especially green corridor for the foreign companies such as Rheinmetall to come and to invest here in Lithuania. Of course, sometimes some politicians are quite skeptical according to this move which we've made last month, because we created an opportunity for companies which will implement huge investments in defense here in Lithuania to start the construction procedures without construction permissions, but that doesn't mean that they don't need the ones. We just are giving an opportunity to work in a parallel in this direction. Of course, we are trying to strengthen our local defense innovation promotion ecosystem. I'm really proud that in our innovation agency we created the Miltech lab, so-called Miltech lab, which is responsible for the defense innovation challenge series. They already signed an MOU with our military, because we have to, our ambition is to create the ecosystem where military people work together with academia and businesses, because sometimes what we see that we still have quite conservative, quite traditional approach how defense innovations should be created. But the intention of our ministry and innovation agency is to show military people and Ministry of Defense that innovation and business solutions can be created due to the demand which military people have. That's one direction. Of course, I have to mention the strengthening the collaboration among the academia, business, and public sector. I think that today is an amazing example how academia, students can combine forces to try to use new tools which can help them to not only for further academic researches, but also to understand how various digital solutions can help and can work. Of course, I must mention that there are huge efforts in building a strong cyber resilience ecosystem in Lithuania. I'm really happy that we are strengthening our international collaboration. We have a couple really worth to mention initiatives. On the governmental level, our Lithuania coordinates cyber rapid response teams together with cybersecurity experts from Estonia, Croatia, Netherlands, Poland, and Romania. We also are initiators of the Regional Cyber Defense Center, which we are developing in cooperation with the United States, Georgia, and Ukraine. Basically, it aims to strengthen analytical and R&D capabilities here in Lithuania, and of course provides various training. So also just recently, actually at the end of the last year, we signed the mutual collaboration with Israel. We know that Israel is one of the strongest in the cyber. So I'm really happy that we understand that we have to build that digital fortress in terms of our cyber resilience. And of course, have to mention about various local initiatives. We have a really, really great National Cybersecurity Center, which strengthening its collaboration with our universities and businesses. So what I see that our ecosystem becomes step by step more open and more proactive, collaborating with businesses and researchers. That's important because we have to remember, for example, at the beginning of the 20th century, for example, the First World War, Second World War, Cold War, the major technological solutions and innovations came from the defense sector to the civilian world. And after the Cold War, the situation changed, and the major innovations are coming from the business community. That's why we have to create the ecosystem where all sides would be open and probably more tolerant to each other. So probably I can talk a lot, but probably that's what we are doing at the moment in Lithuania.
Thank you so much, Erika. I really love the word ecosystem. As I like to joke, our fund CoInvest Capital has in its DNA, ecosystem element, because we always co-invest and we always partner. Sandra, being a regional experienced deep tech investor, how do you see the current situation, the solutions that are coming to your fund, especially, and how quickly we can catch up, how ecosystem is developing? Because, differently from US, where defense VC was much more developed, in Lithuania, just last March, there was zero, exactly round big zero of venture capital available for defense. But since March, our mandate was changed when you started activities, Scale will start activities, and when our funds will complete the new funding rounds, we expect that by the middle of this year, we will already have about $77 million US committed capital available for different solutions, including artificial intelligence for the cognitive warfare. So what do you see happening, what we need to do, what opportunities, and how we add this investment part to innovation and needs?
Thank you for inviting me here. Well, first of all, I don't have any good news for you. We're pretty much late, like several years late, to start developing solutions that are connected to dual use in defense. Several years ago, it's not just Lithuania, by the way, it's the whole European situation. And I talk at the conferences in other European countries and in Central Europe and in Southern Europe. We still see a lot of investors who say, like, defense is a governmental sector. Why do we even need to invest in those solutions? In those startups would be never able to sell to the government because of the procurement procedures and so on. So investments in defense doesn't make sense. The further from the front line, the less belief actually the venture funds have that investments in defense can make economical sense. Several years ago, when we started talking about defense, even before the war in Ukraine, but when it was pretty much obvious that it's gonna start, like at one point, we didn't meet a lot of supporters, except probably from you, in other people in the VC ecosystem and angel ecosystem who would be willing to invest in defense. Even during the first year of the war in Ukraine, the venture ecosystem wasn't still there yet on the one hand. On the other hand, the military ecosystem wasn't quite ready for the innovations because the governmental, I mean, with all due respect, the ministries are, in many cases, are pretty much suspicious towards startups. They would like to support the ecosystem for sure, but when it comes to the solutions that startups are developing, they would rather use something that is much more mature and is proven and is there for years on the market, which is, on the one hand, makes sense in terms of regulations, procurements, and everything. On the other hand, as an Israeli, I can tell you, like, there is a war in my country happening right now. And as much as we are winning the war on the weaponry level, let's put it like this, defense and offense, we miserably failed this war on the informational level. Because for many, many years, our governments wasn't thinking that it was any type of the priority to take the control over the narrative, while the other parties took a lot of control over narrative, over propaganda, over false narrative and everything. And despite the fact we're considered to be the startup nation and the nation of innovation with the 68, if I'm not mistaken, unicorns so far by now, which is the biggest number in the world, comparing to the, per capita, comparing to the size of our population. None of the ministries actually used any innovative solutions to monitor what's happening with the narratives. It actually came as a surprise for them that, first of all, there are those narratives spreading all over the world when it comes to poor Palestinian kids dying in the desert and so on, and how the Jews should be killed and everything. And moreover, that there are a lot of fake accounts like in Twitter operating in Hebrew. Really came as a surprise and shouldn't if you have any secret service in the country, and that's why when we are looking at the solutions in the, let's say, informational and disinformational space, propaganda and everything, they are not less important when it comes to the wars and any types of the conflicts. In some cases, they're even more important. Comparing, because very simple example, for example, the U.S. government is voting for selling or not selling the weaponry to Israel. And how this situation will turn out before the elections. Because those who control the narrative, they actually control the situation of the weapons being sold to Israel. Because it's very easy to say, no, we don't want our government to sell the weapons, right? If there is a certain narrative in social media, if there is a certain narrative in university campuses and so on and so forth. So things like this can actually affect the real physical world. So what's happening on internet, and it wasn't like this 20 years ago, but now what's happening in the internet can actually win or lose the war for you.
Thank you, Sandra. I'm like thinking probably this is the most pessimistic panel that I'm hearing from you, from your lips, but I do hope that it's not too late. And yeah, we like spoke. There are so many changes happening, and just a few weeks ago, European Investment Bank has finally changed its definition of a dual use. And if someone still has those questions, that really raise my eyebrows when I hear it, investing in dual use and defense is socially responsible activity. So I hope to see more VC funds entering the field, despite of all the challenges. And to close, because we would like to also have some time for the coffee break, I would like also each of the panelists to share their final views. It's not too late yet, I hope. So what would be your tip where Lithuania could focus? What investments, what solutions are the most needed? Or maybe even, in general, we talked briefly some days ago with Shahriar that this space, especially in Europe, it's still like an open space. So we can, big things are done not by big countries, but by big people. So what shall we do as Lithuania to really play an important role in deterring, first of all, our adversaries so that we don't need to defend. If we will need to defend, we'll do it properly. So, Shahriar, I'll start with you. I remember one podcast you said, is the war already lost? So I hope that you think otherwise. So your closing points.
No, I don't think the war is lost. It's just begun. Problem with Europe, it's not the United States of Europe. In the United States, it's a lot easier for one place to make a decision. Here is the order of battle, the future battlefield. Here are the requirements. What are the companies that can help, etc. You got a DARPA, you got institutions like that. But in Europe, the tendency would be for politicians to make a lot of decisions, and they don't make the decisions the way an economist would. For example, if you have a system with many European countries wanting to participate, one country's tendency would be to promise as much as possible to a maximum number of companies from their country for production, particularly in their country, as opposed to saying, this is the area of my country's strength. Let me capture the whole European market in laser, in electro-optics, which is a strength in Lithuania. So I hope there'll be some sort of a specialization. I hope there'll be some sort of institution. NATO, I know, is trying to do some of that so that you get more specialization across Europe. On the particular field that we were talking about, disinformation, I think Lithuania has a particular strength traditionally, and this is not just recent years. It goes back to the probably most impressive innovations in thinking in narratology, Algirdas Gramos. Artificial intelligence today, LLMs, have a problem because it's just a mapping of the reality into a language superstrata. The motivations that cry for symbolic presence are human. The computers don't feel that. And to have a powerful narrative that changes the state of mind of somebody from state A to state B, you have to have that intelligence, which is essentially human. You've got these geniuses, Alfredas and Nicholas, they know all about that. How do you extract that? Lithuania, I think, has a great opportunity to specialize in that. by finding the resistance of messaging between neural networks, which is a measure of what the society wants to accept, what doesn't. What are the points of resistance? Don't push this narrative in Israel because there's a latent fear that resists against it. Push another narrative. That's a critical area for winning this war. And I hope it also goes with the integration of defense intelligence. It was the lack of communication between the local intelligence and central intelligence in Israel that blinded the eyes to the 7th of October disaster. Yeah, I think specialized, and particularly in artificial intelligence, is the measurement of resistance as messages carry through neural networks, which could be a hugely important strength for Lithuania.
Thank you. So pick what are you best at and build on. Tip from Shahriar, among other great ideas. Jeremy, what would you like to share for your closing tips?
I think it's never been easier to build a company. The tools that are out there around AI and LLMs allow for somebody to start something, and the founder of an accelerator program, very similar to Baltic, another one that's in the United States, named Techstars, the person, Brad Feld, talked about how ecosystems really have two sets of characters. They have people that support, that government, funders, service providers, and the like, and they have the entrepreneurs. And the first class citizens are the entrepreneurs who are building the technologies, they're building the products, they're really making a big difference. And so I would encourage somebody who's on the sides thinking, hey, I think I have an idea around this, around trying to expose what's truth, how to control narrative, how to influence narrative, how to detect what narratives are working and what's not, to start that company. And I think there's a lot of people from my time in January out in Vilnius, meeting some great founders and some great people who are supporting the ecosystem to start a company, because you're not going to have government who's going to build a George Orwell Ministry of Truth that's written about in 1984. That's not the place of democracies, but it is the place to work together in this dual use space, in this public and private narrative. So entrepreneurs are needed, and there is an emerging and very fast-growing ecosystem in Lithuania that's very impressive. It's getting the attention of people like me and other dual-use investors, because you're at the edge of where people want to control narrative, and that is where democracies get taken down, is on their fringes and on their edges. And because of your proximity to war in Europe, it's vitally important that, and I think you guys have some of the best, we all have some of the best minds that are working on this. So start something now.
Just do it. Erika.
Well, you know, I totally agree what you've said, especially at the beginning, talking about the local capabilities, local European capabilities, defense capabilities strengthening. And I really hope that European defense industry strategy, which is talking about the made in EU principle implementation here. So I hope it will work, because such small countries as Lithuania, small European countries, has really strong niche competencies, which could be really great addition to those big defense players from Germany, France, or Norway, and etc. But talking about our strengths, of course, I'm always saying that everything lies in artificial intelligence solutions. Definitely, Lithuania is one of those countries which have one of the biggest information communication talent pools, and we are well known for our ICT solutions. But talking about the necessities, it is also very important to think about more innovations and solutions in the area of real real-time detection and real-time, neutralization of various detected information. Also, I'm responsible for open data policy, and we are discussing a lot about that ambition to have that real-time data. So I'm always thinking that we have to talk more about the innovations in the field of real-time detection and neutralization solutions, especially talking about disinformation and various information operations categories.
Thank you, Erika. Last but definitely not to the least, Sandra, what would be your closing summary remarks and tips?
I'll try to be less pessimistic here. If you are looking at Lithuania, we actually like Lithuania and the Baltics, the whole region, because we are like too small to probably to look at us separately. We have a huge potential, and that's brain potential, the scientific potential. And as a deep tech investor, I know it because I work with the universities and the scientists. This is where we invest in. And just this potential, if we add to business to the science, if we add political will, and if we add money, this is how we can win in this situation. And by winning in this situation, I mean, if we are talking about the solutions developed in Lithuania, the intellectual property that belongs to Lithuanians in Lithuania, apart from the economical resilience, because of course the financing goes to Lithuania, other countries would buy those solutions. We are talking about political independence, because there is a huge difference between being dependent on the solution that's US or other countries. US is not biggest evil in the world. I'm looking at Jeremy. Will or won't provide to us under different types of political, conditions, circumstances, and so on, or being the supplier for the solution, and even being a small country, have our say in different decisions, for example, on the European level at least. So I see a lot of potentials. We definitely need more corporations. We need more money into the scientific commercialization and more people who can try to commercialize the science. And essentially that's the cooperation between the businesses, the government, the investors, and the scientists.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you, everyone, in person, on stage, and on the screen. To wrap up, I would like probably to use again the title of our panel. And as Sandra just said, I will paraphrase her, speak and be heard. There is a niche and opportunity where we can build on our strengths. And let's innovate, invest, and integrate with the military, with the needs, with the society, and let's make sure that we retain our independent minds and independent state. Thank you, dear speakers. Few household items for the audience. We would like to get back to the original broadcasting schedule, so the next panel will start sharp at 10 minutes past 4. So unless you need a very quick personal break downstairs to visit the facilities, we would recommend you to stay in the hall, and we will have more time to mingle and enjoy coffee and a bit of snacks after the final panel. And then those who will stay longer, we will have the teams that are working from the morning presenting the pitches to the jury. So one more time, we will resume with the new panel exactly in 7 minutes. Thanks one more time, everyone. Jeremy, I'll get you your... Okay, he's gone, so I'll get him present later.